Don DeBar is a radio host and journalist at CPR News, joining us from Ossining, New York. We also have Greg Simmons, an independent researcher and author, joining us from Uppsala, Sweden. Welcome to you both. I'll start with you first, Don DeBar. $100 billion. I don't know if that's a lot or maybe it's not a lot, but it does sound like a lot for a commitment to perhaps be pondering there by NATO to give to Ukraine. What are your thoughts on that?
Depends on what you're measuring it against. Let's start with what was Russia's annual military budget, this big threat to world peace, prior to this war that began in earnest in February of 2022? $65 billion a year. That there's actually no country in the world that has a budget of more than $100 billion a year for their military except the US and China. China's is about 250 billion for its entire military to protect 1.5 billion people. So from that measure, $100 billion is an awful lot of money. Let's look at it, however, from the cost to the people that are paying it in the United States and presumably in the EU. With $100 billion, you could solve the homeless problem in the United States entirely. There'd be no more homelessness in the United States rather than tens of thousands of people living in the streets in every major city. You could solve the hunger problem in the entire world for 5 years with $100 billion. 9 million people a year die of starvation in the world every year. You could solve that problem. So it's a lot of money.
Indeed. It's quite, I shouldn't say surprising, Greg Simmons, but it's somewhat, I don't know what to call it, to say that NATO has done this before Trump comes on board. I mean, we're looking at 8 months now, if that were to happen, and between now and 8 months from now, including April, a lot of things could happen when it comes to NATO and Russia. Given this aid were to happen or not, we're still looking at the tensions there that keep ratcheting up. What type of confrontations do you foresee, or where do you see this going in terms of the military aspect of it?
Well, I think the main problem is the level of unpredictability, and the unpredictability comes from the collective West, because what you have here is a bunch of mediocre politicians at best who have bruised egos. They predicted that Russia would be defeated, that Ukraine would win. They've done everything to try and do that, yet this is not the case. So it seems their egos are worth more than a major military confrontation that NATO initiates with Russia. So this level of emotional investment in it from them makes it very unpredictable. The predictability comes from Russia, which has been, to date, I'd say, rather restrained and very cautious about these constant provocations which have been used to try and irritate Russia.
And Greg Simmons, we're looking also at the fact that Don DeBar is, I thought Don DeBar was no longer with us. Don DeBar, we're looking at what Russia has experienced recently in terms of that terrorist attack. And of course, they have, not of course, but they have, through their investigations, concluded that Ukraine is behind that. And they also are putting the UK and the US on the assistance list to that terrorist act. Doesn't this make for a dangerous concoction, along with that possible military aid and the fact that you have NATO creeping up to Russia's borders?
Absolutely. If you look at the big picture here, you know, what they call hybrid wars. The thing to keep in mind at the start is that the U.S., with its NATO construct, is making war on Russia. That's a pretty dangerous condition all by itself. Russians have been very restrained in their response to this. I could imagine what kind of response we would provide Russia if they had started moving their military towards Germany's eastern border, or actually towards the Elbe within Germany, which is what was their right under the resolution of World War II. But instead, Russia asserting its own border is an offense that requires war to be made on it. I think that we have to look at the nature of NATO, its history, going back to the original Treaty of Dunkirk and Brussels and all of that. And then 75 years ago today, as a matter of fact, the signing of the Atlantic Treaty, the North Atlantic Treaty. Its purpose has always been, in essence, to control Europe, to conquer Europe, to administer Europe as a part of an empire run from Washington, and to weaponize Europe against Russia and elsewhere. We've seen they've been doing it against the whole world, really. And so all the money that goes into that, whether it's taken from the people of Europe directly or from Americans and thrown over there or elsewhere, we're looking at weaponizing the European continent against Russia and China, which, if it's successful on the part of the people making it, means we're going to have a global war. And I don't think that turns out well for anybody.
Russia is looking for trying to recruit 30,000 on a monthly basis, from what reports are indicating, Dr. Rick Simmons. Do you think this is just to continue the war, or is it a combination of continuing the war, but to also make sure that it's prepared for an immediate, perhaps, type of military confrontation?
Well, I mean, they have escalatory dominance at the moment, Russia. As you say, 30,000 recruits each month volunteering. That's not getting shanghaied and beaten off the street like they have to do in Ukraine, but rather volunteering to serve Russia in the military. So yes, I think with the summer coming, they will look at creating an offensive to take what is left or what they want of Ukraine. But at the same time, NATO and the West is so suicidally unpredictable, they have to always have in the back of their mind that the worst case scenario that these morons might actually attack Russia, because they are, I mean, at this stage, utterly self-deluded. You just hear these public statements of these ones, and it's like we're living this Dr. Strangelove, love the bomb. And this level of delusion has no place in a sane world.
All right, thank you very much. Let me thank our guest, Don DeBar, radio host and journalist at CPR News, and also Greg Simmons, our independent researcher and author. Thank you to you both. With that, we come to an end for this news review.